Today we're taking a deep dive into possibly the most loved family food favourite out there, spaghetti bolognese. I'm Barney a food editor here at Good Food, and it's been my job to elevate the classics like this to the next level. So let's jump straight into it and run through the ingredients I'll be using, and while I cook, I'll be giving you lots of tips and tricks. So for our next level spaghetti bolognese, we've got quite a few ingredients. For me, a kind of really good bolognese ragu, it's a little bit of alchemy. So we kind of got some sweet, some sour, a few rogue ingredients, but they're going to add lots and lots of flavour. This bolognese sauce is all about packing in flavour. So let me run you through them. For the base of our bolognese, we've got some beef mince. This is just some lovely organic beef mince, which is about 10% fat. We've got some Italian sausages. Now, traditionally in a bolognese, they tend to use 3 types of meat, which is beef, minced pork and minced veal, but I'm supplementing the minced pork for some Italian sausage because that essentially is minced pork with some lovely extra flavours added to it. So our Italian sausages they should have some fennel in there, some garlic, maybe a bit of chilli, but lots of seasoning. That's going to add loads of flavour. Then we've got some pancetta. So this is just some diced pancetta, which can add some fattiness and some richness. Again, salty and smoky. You can use smoked pancetta or unsmoked pancetta, it's totally up to you. I like to use smoked pancetta because it does add an element of smokiness to everything. We've got our liquid, so we're going to be cooking everything in olive oil. So I've got some extra virgin olive oil. We've got some white wine. I think white wine just makes things a little bit lighter. But by all means, this could be swapped out. If you want a deeper flavoured ragu, white wine is going to give you a slightly lighter option. Red wine, a more deeper braise. Then I'm using some full fat milk, which could seem a little bit rogue to some people, but it is used a lot in bologneses. It adds a creaminess without making things too rich. So it sort of brings everything together. It doesn't thicken as it would do if you were using cream. Then we've got our vegetables. This is a classic soffritto. Soffritto in Italian or Mirepoix in French, and that's a trinity of vegetables, and that is your absolute classic. Carrot, onion, celery. Now we've got these finely chopped, but not too fine, because I still want them to sort of appear in the sauce and have a place in the sauce. But if your knife skills aren't up to scratch, you can simply blitz the 3 vegetables together in a food processor and cut them down quite fine. Then we've got some Parmesan rind. Now we're going to be using Parmesan at the end, but this is just the rind that I've taken off the cheese. So whenever I'm using a hard cheese like Parmesan or Grana Padano, I keep the rinds, I freeze them, and when I'm making sauces like this, or if I'm making a cheese sauce, I infuse the rinds in the sauce, and it just gives it that lovely cheesiness, and it just adds loads of flavour with something you would normally throw away. Then we've got some chopped garlic, fresh thyme, some bay. I mean, I absolutely love bay. I think bay is one of the most underused herbs out there. I use bay in absolutely everything. I mean, it's free, it kind of grows in people's gardens, you can find it in parks, and it's just got such a lovely sort of sweet, slightly floral flavour to it. And then we've got king of the dried herbs, some dried oregano, some dried porcini mushroom, which if you can't get hold of, certainly aren't essential, but they add lots of savoury flavour to it. We're not going to rehydrate these, we're going to keep them dried and we're going to rehydrate them in the sauce. We've got some tomato puree, we've got some sugar, some vinegar, and then we've got quite a different ingredient, but you just need to think of this as just adding lots of saltiness and lots of umami. We're using Thai fish sauce. Now, if you don't have any Thai fish sauce, you could mash a few anchovies, or you could just leave it out. So we've got 4 tins of tomatoes, and then lastly we've got some fresh basil. Now the first thing we need to do is we need to fry off our mince and our sausage. For me, cooking is about getting lots of little jobs right. You do the little jobs right, you bring them together, and that's how you end up with a fantastic dish. And the first skill I'm going to show you is how I think you should be cooking mince properly. So classically, people are getting their mince, they're cooking it in a frying pan, it sort of stews, the liquid comes out, and they're never browning it quite well. And mince, just like a steak or like any other piece of meat, needs to be browned well to get lots of flavour on it. Now there's a trick to this. The trick to this is cooking it slowly and letting it brown. So it will release some liquid, but you just stay with it. That liquid reduces, and then the meat will start to sizzle in its own fat. So you need a pan on a medium heat. We're going to drizzle our pan with a little bit of olive oil. So we want about a tablespoon of olive oil to start with. Crumble our mince into the pan. When you're cooking, you cook with your eyes, you cook with your nose because you smell things, you also cook with your ears, and it's really important to listen to how things cook. So with this, I want a gentle sizzle. I don't want things to fry too hard, I just want it to sizzle away gently. We're just going to split our sausages in half, remove the casing, just like we did with the mince, just crumble that. Already I can hear and I can see a change in how this is cooking. Once it starts browning, you need to keep an eye on it. I mean, the rest of it can be done. You can walk away and then just stir it occasionally. But once it starts browning, you want to keep an eye on it and you just want to toast it evenly. We need to watch out because it starts to spit at you as it starts to crackle. And this is when you need to toast it. This is when it's going to start browning really well. You just want to turn it over after it's browned, and we're going to get lots of lovely deep brown speckled bits on our mince. This is called the Maillard reaction. It's when the natural sugars in the meat or natural sugars in anything start to brown, they caramelise, they give you a lot more flavour. So cooking our mince has taken a good 25 minutes, but what we've got in this pan is beautiful. It's toasted, it's browned, it's sizzling away, it's just as you want it. So this is a job really worth doing. So rather than cooking our sauce on top of the stove, we have to do lots of stirring, we're going to cook ours in the oven. So my oven's on at 140, which is 120 fan. Now we're going to get our pan, which is oven proof, warm, and just like cooking the mince, we're going to render down and make our pancetta crispy. So another tablespoon of oil into our oven-proof pan, then in with our pancetta. Just like before, we don't want to hear this going crazy in the pan, we just want to hear it sizzling gently and nicely. Our pancetta's had about 5 minutes, it's sizzling beautifully. It's rendered all its fat out, which is going to add lots of flavour to our sauce, and it's also going to help us cook our vegetables. So now we're going to go in with our vegetables. We're going to add these all at once, but we want to cook them down for a good 10 minutes until they're soft and just starting to brown. Again, sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Can you hear that? Listen. That's how we know we're cooking. So now I'm adding my herbs, which are my bay leaves, small sprig of fresh thyme, a good tablespoon dried oregano. Then we're going in with our garlic. Now we're going to go in with our dried porcini mushrooms. Now these are totally optional, and normally when you work with dried porcini mushrooms, you rehydrate them to soften them and then cook with them. But because our sauce is going to be cooking for such a long time, the dried porcini mushrooms are going to rehydrate in the sauce. I always add some sort of mushroom element to my bolognese sauce. If I don't have dried porcini mushrooms, I'd add sliced mushrooms at this stage, or very finely chopped mushrooms. But here, because I have dried porcini, they add so much depth of flavour. They add like a real meatiness without adding any meat. You can smell them, they've got so much that umami-ness. Umami being this word that describes savouriness, this depth of flavour. And this is what we're going to get from these dried porcini mushrooms. To add these, we're just going to crumble them in, break them up a bit with our fingers. So we're going to cook everything down for about 10 minutes. Now you want your vegetables to be super soft at this stage. You want to give them this really good initial cooking. This is the stage I think people get wrong. They sort of rush it, the vegetables are cooked slightly on the outside and still crunchy in the middle, and you never get it back when you cook the sauce for longer. So at this stage, really take a bit of time to cook your vegetables down, sweat them until they're just starting to brown and they're really soft. Our vegetables had about 10 minutes. So you can see that they're starting to soften, they're becoming one in the pan. They've cooked down in all that lovely pancetta fat. They're starting to become a little bit sticky, not brown, but sort of golden, catching on the edges. And now it's time to add the big flavour bits to the sauce. So next we're going to add some sugar. Now the sugar is going to counterbalance the acidity we're going to add when we're going to add our vinegar. Now whenever I'm cooking with tin tomatoes, whatever the sauce is, I always add sugar and vinegar. It's called a gastrique, and it just amplifies the flavour of the tomatoes and sort of mellows everything out. So in with our sugar, and stir our sugar through. So that starts to not caramelise, but you just want that to dissolve in with the vegetables. And now we're going to add our tomato puree. Now whenever you're cooking with tomato puree, you want to toast it off to get maximum flavour out of it and stop it tasting raw. So that's going to go in. We're going to give that a minute or two. So now we're going to go with our big flavour boosters. We've got some red wine vinegar and we've got our fish sauce. Red wine vinegar is going to bring a lovely hit of acidity, and our fish sauce is going to bring this complex salty flavour, which is just going to be background. You won't even know it's there. We're going to add those to the pan, they're going to sizzle down for a minute, and then we're going to add everything else. And once all that's cooked down, and we've got this lovely, sticky sort of slightly, it's not a paste, but all the vegetables are sticking together from that sugar, from the tomato puree, from the vinegar, from the fish sauce. We're going to go back in with our meat. So here's a lovely little tip to get rid of every drop of the tomato from the tomato tin. So whenever you use tin tomatoes, you're always left with this little bit of residue, which might not seem like much, but it seems a shame not to use it. So I rinse the tins out with a bit of liquid. And because we're using wine in this recipe, wine is the perfect liquid to rinse our tins out with. And we're just going to take our wine, pour it into our tin, give our tin a rinse, all that lovely tomato juice out of it and into our second tin. You see, tin's clean, lovely. Second tin, same thing, into our third tin, into our last tin, and then this is going to go into our sauce. I mean, that already smells amazing. It smells a bit raw, but you can smell its potential. You can smell that when it's been in the oven for about 3 hours, that's going to have so much flavour to it. So trust me on this. This is optional. If you don't believe me, don't do it. You're still going to have a lovely sauce. But if you've got some full fat milk, it just adds a richness to it. It adds this sort of lactic creaminess without making things too thick. A little pinch of salt as well. Then we have my Parmesan rind. That goes in as well. Because we're going to be using basil, it's a shame not to use the stalks. We're going to add those. Now, if you want to be super smart about all of this and you have some kitchen string, nothing stops you tying all the herbs together, but having them just loose in the sauce adds as much flavour, makes no difference. We're going to fish them out at the end anyway. So in that goes. Honestly, I wish you could smell that because that smells so good. So that's coming up to a simmer. We're going to cover that with a lid. So that's going to take about 3 hours in the oven. Now I would check it every hour or so, make sure it's not catching on the bottom, make sure it's not reducing too fast. But in about 3 hours time, you're going to lift that up and you're going to have this rich sauce, one of the best ragouts stroke bolognese sauces you've ever tried. So our sauce has had 3 hours. I've given it a stir every hour or so. And can you see just how beautiful that is? It's rich. You can see some of the fats on the top. The mince has cooked down. That Parmesan rind that we put in earlier is all lovely and soft and it's infused all its flavour into the sauce. Now that sauce is ready to go. You can chill it, leave it in the fridge, I'd say for up to 3 or 4 days. The flavour is just going to get better. Or you can freeze it. Now you don't have to use this with pasta. You can use this in a lasagna, perfect base for lasagna, or you could pipe it into cannelloni. But there you have a beautiful, really rich bolognese ragu. Now our sauce is cooked, it's time to introduce it to the pasta. Traditionally, a bolognese ragu is cooked with a flatter pasta like a pappardelle or a fettuccine, but to trigger those childhood home-cooked memories, we are going to use spaghetti because there is nothing like a spaghetti bolognese. So here we have about 400 grams of spaghetti. So I think on the packet this says 11 minutes. I'm going to give it about 9-10 minutes. I still want it to have some bite. When you're cooking pasta in boiling water, do not add oil to the water. It's a total waste of oil. The way to stop pasta sticking when it's in water, you pay a lot of attention to it for the first 2 or 3 minutes. You just keep on stirring it and then you can walk away. Our spaghetti is cooked for 9 minutes, so it says 11 minutes on the packet. I've cooked it for 9 minutes. Let's give it a taste. It's practically lamb, it's got a bit of bite to it. This is just how we want it. And then the next trip is, I think, a total game changer when it comes to cooking pasta. So we're going to finish the pasta in the sauce. Now I know, like sort of iconically, you see those bowls of undressed pasta with bolognese sauce on top and parmesan over it. Forget that. Finishing pasta in the sauce is going to change the way that you cook pasta. If you don't do it already, honestly, it's what takes a normal bowl of pasta into the sort of restaurant steaks. The sauce gets absorbed into the pasta starchy water goes into the sauce, the two become homogeneous, they become one, the whole dish becomes one. We could just drain our pasta, but it's very easy to do it with tongs, plus we get a bit of that water to let our sauce down with. Here I've got half the ragu. I'm going to save the other, I'm going to freeze the other half, and we're just going to put our spaghetti into the sauce, give that a really good stir, cook that over a low heat for 2 to 3 minutes. Once we're happy that the pasta's nicely coated in the sauce, it's time to finish everything. So for this, I'm going to add parmesan and mix it in as well as add it to the end. And whenever I'm cooking anything like this, just to enrich it, I add a splash of olive oil at the end. So with the heat off, and then we've got the basil, which we had before, and that's going to go through now. because we want to keep its freshness. We're going to give that a final stir. See that the Parmesan just helps everything stick together. We're ready to serve. That's delicious. Rich, hearty, packed with flavour. If you enjoyed this recipe, give us a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Thanks so much for watching. Get the full recipe in the description. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon for more episodes, and visit goodfood.com or download our app for more tasty recipes. Leave a comment below and let me know what you'd like to see me cook next.